But,
Okay. There we go.
You got a little bit of correction there, yeah.
you could move it up close to it if they're just on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
I keep asking Rob, when am I gonna get on?
Here we go.
You're wearing my glasses.
You know, you can. Oh, you already have that all the way up.
I do. All right.
Might be more stable if you just touch the thing to it like that.
Okay.
Oh, really?
There we go.
Yeah, night driving was no fun.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wow. Looks like the weather's kind of going to turn out today.
Good to see you. You good, yeah?
All right.
Did you know that? I didn't know it shut the thing. Yes, sir.
So I shouldn't be offended,
Stan, how's it going weather-wise in Tulsa?
Pouring down rain right now. It's one of the reasons for our weak turnout today. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 members and me, so 8 members. So it's a little lower than it usually is, but I attribute that to the weather. That's why.
It started raining and then it's turned to freezing stuff in Oklahoma City, and I think the freezing stuff might be headed Tulsa way. Is that what you're hearing?
Yes, in fact, we had a Rotary minute note function planned for this evening at rehearsal. It's been canceled because of that. So,
That was it.
but I just think that it's safe. In terms of safety, we just need to be a little more cognizant of. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started here with the meeting. We're going to have a little bit of a pledge and have a little bit of business. And then I'm going to introduce you to it and let us know what's happening over there under that big dome at Northeast 23rd and Lincoln. All right.
Great, thank you, Stan.
Usually my wife is the one who takes
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday noon meeting of the Rotary Club of Tulsa Will Rogers, the friendliest club in District 6110. Could we all stand for the pledge, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. You may be seated. It's kind of a nasty day outside. I appreciate the fact that everybody has decided to brave the weather to be here. Glad to see everybody. Has anybody heard from the Flugels this week?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did, and they were gonna try to be here, but they've had quite the trifecta. I guess Pat had, kidneys done, Jim had a minor surgery, and then their grandson was in that horrific bicycle accident, but, and still in ICU.
My word, I heard about that. I haven't heard from them all week. I was just curious. Anyway, let's see. Anybody? We'll get to the birthdays here in a minute. One of our guests, in fact, had a birthday yesterday. Right, Senator?
Thank you so much, Stan. Thank you for remembering. Yes, I did.
Okay. Anyway, we have several evolutions happening this week with our district and with us, in fact. The South Central Rotary, what is it?
Youth Exchange.
Youth Exchange being held Friday and Saturday at the Southern Hills Marriott. Yesterday I got the call from District Governor Webster, and she informed me that they need places or accommodations for 39 members attending. And as of this morning, before I left the house, it was down to 11. So we have really stepped up. I'd like to thank Susie Morgan in particular, and anybody else who knows anybody who has stepped up to take in these youth exchange members coming. I don't know exactly where they're all coming from. However, Susie is going to be bringing them to MSNI for our service day on Saturday morning. That's just going to count for double international volunteer credits. So yes, boom, yeah. Let's see, I got a thing in the mail yesterday in my email from one of the members out at Broken Arrow, and they're having a big, huge fundraiser on the 25th of February called it's called Crowing Rights. It's a trivia challenge, and if we can put together a team, pay the entry fee of $400. I think we have what, 3 members or 5-player teams compete. And it's 8 rounds of 10 questions each, you know, pop culture type of questions and sports and whatnot. You know, last year I guess they've raised $74,000 over the past 13 years, and all profits go to Happy Hands for the hearing impaired and Rotary Club scholarship funds. And like I say, it costs $400 to enter a team. So it's something we can think about and discuss. You know, I watch Jeopardy every day, not every day, but pretty often enough to know I'm not that good, so.
You could have a younger person too.
Yes. Anyway, oh, let's see, what else, do we have any other announcements, any other things? Yes, Bob.
I was just what people have asked about it, but I was going to tell everybody about the Will Rogers tour that was given by the Tulsa Architectural Foundation. We ended up having over 200 people.
200 people for the architectural tour at Tulsa Will Rogers High School. It's great that you mentioned Will Rogers High School, because this is going to segue right into my introduction of our guest speakers today. We had booked this engagement back in September at the district conference out at the Marriott, Southern Hills Marriott, with Senator Dossett. But anyway, as I stated earlier, yesterday was her birthday, and it just so happens that you know, she's kicking it off right by being here her next trip around the sun, by being our guest today and letting us know what's going on with our legislature. But it's very important and pertinent that Will Rogers is in her district. She is the senator representing that district, as is State Representative Waldron. He is the House rep for that district, House District 77. JoAnna is, and here's the thing: both of these folks here our guests are by trade classroom teachers, and education is their passion. It's very important to them. And I'm glad they're over there with these budget meetings. Very important, because it's so important that we, you know, fund education. And I guess we're gonna get to hear some things about that. But I would like to introduce the Meech, Senator JoAnna Dossett. I don't know if some people may remember, I attempted my foray into campaign politics back in 2020, and one of my primary opponents was Senator Dossett. I did not emerge victorious, obviously, but we all got behind her, and she emerged victorious on election day. Anyway, Senator JoAnna Dossett has been a Peace Corps volunteer, has been was a teacher for how many years, Senator?
Where'd she go?
Yeah.
Stan, I was a teacher here in Oklahoma for 15 and a half years, and that half is really important to me. Upon winning election in November of 2020, I did have to resign from teaching in the public school setting. So I was only able to make it that half year after my 15-year mark. And anyway, so 15 and a half years teaching in public schools here in Oklahoma.
Very good. And Representative Waldron won election to his House seat in 2018. And I have a special connection with John Waldron. Me, him, and Tim Gilpin are the only 3 alumni of the George Washington University in this community that I'm aware of. Anybody else, John? You know of anybody else who graduated from GW who has a diploma from George Washington University?
First of all, go Colonials.
Hoorah!
Secondly, yeah, hoorah. I did once meet a Colonial who was the father of one of my high school students. I can't recall his name though.
Very good. You know,
But GW, it's an excellent school. Y'all should check it out.
They have a very good PA program, and I have a niece that also was a graduate of the PA MPA program. When I attended nursing anesthesia school there, we took core curriculum classes with the PAs, and well, I was only there for 2 semesters before going to clinical in San Diego, but that's another story. Tall tale for another day. Anyway, I'd like to turn the mic over to Senator Dossett and to Representative Waldron. Let's give them a warm Will Rogers Rotary welcome. Take it away, you two.
Thank you so much, Stan. So we're back over to me, Senator Dossett, JoAnna Dossett. So proud to be here today, and I'm so very grateful for your flexibility. You've really been a technology hero today. As you kind of previewed with our guests here, with our fellow Rotarians here, yeah, you and I set this event back in September, and I very foolishly failed to remember how busy January gets, the month of January gets. We're not in legislative session yet. As you all may know, we go into session on the first Monday, the Monday of the first full week of February.
Well, let me interject
So
one.
this year that is, oh, yes.
Let me interject this one thing. Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape. There you go. Back to you.
Absolutely, I fully agree with that, and Stan, you have just been the most flexible throughout this. But yeah, so we're not in session yet. That'll start February 6th, but being still fairly new to the legislature, I simply forgot how busy, how jam-packed January is. Although we're not in Oklahoma City every day, the month of January, we are in Oklahoma City many days the month of January. I myself have been attending the Hunt Institute Oklahoma Legislators Retreat for the last day and a half or so. And what that is simply a gathering, a bipartisan and bicameral gathering of Oklahoma legislators with some of the top public education experts in the country, stretching all the way from early childhood pre-K settings all the way through university settings. So we've heard from top experts all over the country. We've heard from agency heads, both in Oklahoma and in other states, on best practice and best policy when it comes to public education. We're wrapping up that event now, and then I'll turn off my mic and let Brett Waldron give his kind of piece about what's been going on for him today. It's been a very busy day with legislators going back and forth between the Hunt Institute retreat and also very important House budget hearings. So I'll turn my mic off and let him give you a little what's been going on in the budget hearings. Here he is.
Well, hello. Well, I've had a doozy of a morning. I attended the State Department of Education budget presentation by our newly elected superintendent, Brian Walters. I was stunned to discover that he had no budget to present. He instead gave us a 4-page gloss for a performance review, which he breezed through, and told us that a new budget would be presented next week. He doesn't have the statutory authority to replace the previous budget with a new one. That needs to be approved by the State Board of Education. He didn't seem to know that. When questioned by my Republican and Democratic legislators, he fell back into a defensive position and started talking again about teacher indoctrination, which is a subject completely irrelevant to the budget hearings we were supposed to be having. Just before the meeting, I shook his hand and asked him if he was ready to stop campaigning and start governing. Today, we got a pretty clear answer that our newly elected state superintendent is not ready to govern as state superintendent.
Wow.
All right. I always know that it's going to be good when Rep. Waldron takes the mic. I myself tend to be a bit more reserved on the mic at all times, but I will piggyback a bit on what Rep. Waldron said about, it was maybe the first couple of weeks of my first legislative session back in 2021, February of 2021. And we had before us in Senate Education Committee Brian Walters, just teacher Brian Walters, who was before us as an executive nomination on the part of the governor, needing confirmation by the Senate to be confirmed as Secretary of Education. And I will report that on that very early day, during my very first few weeks in office, I was the lone nay vote on Secretary Walters in the Senate hearings. And it really had not so much to do with ideological differences, but after my interview with him, I did not feel that he had the temperament to hold elected or appointed office. And for that reason, I voted no. In Senate Education Committee, I believe when we held the floor vote, I do believe Senator Julia Kirk from Oklahoma City joined me in voting no on Secretary Walters' appointment. Well, then Secretary Walters' appointment. Actually, I think he's still now Secretary Walters. That's a whole other issue on his appointment. Yeah, I was very interested to hear Rep. Waldron's account of this morning's proceedings.
In terms of legislation, Senator, how many bills have you submitted for this session, this one incoming?
Yes, wonderful question. I'll give you a big overview and then bring it back down to the bills that I filed. I think the legislature-wide, we're looking at over 3,000 bills filed. Oh my goodness, yes. I believe the Senate has contributed to over 1,000 of those. And then Senate Democrats, I'm a member of the Senate Democratic Caucus. We have submitted 122 of those, and I personally have submitted 10 of those. This might take us down another pathway, another trail. I do firmly believe that we filed too many bills in Oklahoma, and we passed too many laws in Oklahoma, generally speaking. On the Senate side, you all may know this, we are unlimited in the number of bills that we can each individually file. On the House side, I think there is a limitation, perhaps 8 bills per House member. I was very ambitious. My first session, I filed 24. This time around, or my first legislature, pardon, I filed 24. Going into my second legislature, I've decided to scale back on the number of bills and really focus on advancing a smaller number of bills.
How about you, Representative Waldron? Have you authored any?
Oh, I have 8. Yes, I have 8 bills: free school lunches, teacher staff, and support staff raises. Let's see, bills on data governance, that's for tracking teacher certification. A bill on Holocaust education. And let's see, and a plain language bill for notice and evictions for tenants that would take the 1970s language currently used and turn it into plain language so tenants and landlords alike can recognize their rights.
It's still 15 days written notice before eviction, right?
Yeah.
That's Title 41.
Yes.
That's Title 41 OS, correct?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. And what we want to do is make language that will clarify to the tenant their rights to appear in court. All too often, many tenants don't know their rights, they don't get their rights, and that's one of the reasons Oklahoma is a leader in evictions, especially in Tulsa and Oklahoma counties.
Good.
Questions, Jan?
Yes.
What are the salary increases he's proposing?
For teachers?
Teachers and support staff.
Representative Waldron, what is your recommended increase in salary for teachers, for classroom teachers and support staff? Is it a percentage, like a COLA or something like that? Or is it anything above what we would commonly think of as a COLA, cost of living increase?
Yeah, it's a flat increase across the board of 20%. 20% more than you would have received the year before at that level. I say go big or go home. It's an inflationary economy. We're sitting on an enormous pile of money we've refused to spend. We need to be competitive in the region, and especially support staff needs to be given a living wage for all the work they do for our kids.
It's funny that you should mention support staff. There was a blurb put out by somebody from Will Rogers just a couple of days ago that they are seeking teaching assistants, teachers' assistants, and ancillary staff. They didn't say volunteer. They just said they're begging for help right now. This had gone out actually a year ago, November. The then principal of Will Rogers, Nick Dennis, is a member of our club actually. And we had our meeting, our first Tuesday meeting at school in November of 21. And as I was leaving, she pulls me aside and asks me, because we're just emerging from pandemic, you know, if we can get anybody to come in and volunteer, like to chaperone field trips. You don't even have to be certified, and you just basically, and she used the word babysit, but you know, like proctor exams, chaperone field trips, just you know, a supervised study hall or whatever, because there's nobody to do that right now, or then anyway. Apparently still now, but. One thing I have done, I retired from my anesthesia practice right as we were in the middle of the 2020 campaign right as we were beginning, the month we began lockdown, I hung up my nurse anesthesia license, but I kept my RN, and I go up to school a couple times a month and help the school nurse do her admin, and which really helps her out a great deal. I've been trying to recruit volunteers among my alumni friends. We just haven't had very many takers though. And you know, I guess it's going to take something to sweeten the pie a little bit to maybe ease this deficit of manpower in the teaching ranks and the ancillary ranks too, I guess. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this in the first person and seeing it and dealing with it. But 20% I think is not unreasonable, actually. You know, I think most of us are thinking, you know, perhaps a little higher might attract some more folks. But you know, realistically, I think that's a very reasonable thing. Representative Waldron, good move. Do you think are we now as far as getting it heard in committee? What are the other? Is it competing with anything else that you're aware of? Any chance it might get folded into something else?
Yeah, that's a fine question, and I made a strategic choice when I said go big or go home. There's a 6% bill, much smaller, that has also been proposed by an educator in the Republican caucus. I think it's healthy to have competing bills, and I think my bill will put pressure on the Republicans to do the right thing for support staff. I've already got great media attention and lots of public support. As a Democrat, it's often hard to get bills passed under my name, but we Democrats have an enormous influence in the legislature by making the issue about raising support staff, raise pay, for example. We get to shift the conversation to practical matters of government that the Republicans have to respond to, and their response is a pay raise bill of their own. I'm hopeful that we can merge the two and come up with a compromise. They say 6, I say 20, so let's go 13.
Sweet. Question, if I may. I remember when JoAnna, or Senator Dossett and I were candidates campaigning, and we had to go. We went to one meeting in particular, Keith McCarter's home, and met with Mr. Black from Oklahoma Policy Institute, discussing the budget. And he made mention that in 2008 or 2008, 2009. Close to 34% of the state budget was dedicated to education, and at the time we went to that particular meeting was down to around 22%. This was in late 2019, I guess it was, or early 2020, I guess. Senator Dossett, do you remember that?
I do remember, and that's correct. Maybe late 2019, possibly January of 2020, somewhere in there.
Exactly. What's, do you have any, do you have like an essay or like a balance sheet of how much of the actual tax receipt or the tax paid money is now going to education? What part of the pie of the whole budget whole is education now, public education? Either one.
Okay, well, this is Rep. Waldron. It's true that education is the biggest appropriated item. When you consider non-appropriated items in the budget, the share gets smaller, but it's still the case that in every state, education is the primary budget item. That's because states have the primary responsibility for public education, and it's a massive social investment. We don't do national defense. The federal government covers a lot of highway spending, and a lot of our healthcare spending is block grants provided by the federal government. Education is primarily a realm of the states, so it's natural that it should be the biggest share of a pie. The question in Oklahoma is the pie itself big enough? People like to say things like, well, education's our biggest budget item. That's a neutral fact. It doesn't tell you anything good or bad by itself. And they will also tell you we passed an historic budget increase in 2018, but they'll forget to mention that that was after a decade in which Oklahoma led the nation in cuts to education. And then they forget to mention that we had a COVID pandemic, a lockdown, and inflation, so that the pay raises we voted for 4 years ago are mostly that brought us back to where we had been before the cuts. And we've been losing ground ever since again. It's time to act, and we can't use a lot of this sophistry about how big the education budget is. The real question is, does it meet our need? Do our teacher salaries meet the need of the teaching profession? If they did, we wouldn't have an historic teacher shortage. Does our classroom spending meet the need of today's students? If it did, we would be in a much better position. We're rated in the bottom 5 in school outcomes, and that's because of a chronic failure to invest and the rather is designed to keep us from, I think, Senator Dossett.
I think I'm gonna piggyback one more time on what Rep. Waldron said. It's a very, very common narrative at the Capitol to hear, well, we give 50% of our money to the schools, and they keep asking for more. And why are we putting, or even sometimes we hear the words throwing so much money at education? And one answer that I really like to give to that question is, it does make up a large part of the budget, but I think that what we really need to have an eye on now is those entities who are trying to get a piece of that money via private school voucher schemes. And I think there are interests out there are individuals, there are entities out there who see that big portion of money that we put into public education, because it is our responsibility, it is our constitutional responsibility to provide for the public education of all children in the state. They see that big chunk and they'd like to get a piece of it via these the voucher schemes that would funnel our public tax dollars out into privately held or privately controlled, privately managed entities. And I really do think that that's a very relevant question for right now, for this session, and really any session in the near future.
Any questions, anybody?
What about school safety?
We have a question from Susie Morgan about school safety. Are there any bills concerning school safety, having armed guards in the hallways, anything like that you know of?
Thank you, Susie, and Stan, I'll take this one, and then Rep. Waldron may want to answer a follow-up. I'm still in the very beginning stages of sifting through all the bills and reading through them, but I will take a moment to plug a bill coming from my colleague, State Senator Mary Warren from Norman, Oklahoma. She has a bill that would, so say a child gains access to a firearm, that would shift responsibility of that to the parent or to the guardian of the child. And so trying to put some more personal responsibility back on the parents or guardians of children who also choose to have guns in their homes. And so I'm very supportive of measures like that. We need to do everything that we can do to keep guns out of the hands of children. I know that that doesn't specifically apply to school settings, but we all know where children go every day. They go to school. And we've all heard the stories. They seem never to stop about a child who's brought a gun to school. And so my colleague from Norman has a bill that would shift responsibility back onto the parents of a child in that situation.
Who's that from Norman? Is that
Yeah, Senator Mary Boren.
Oh, okay, okay.
Excellent.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Dossett. Any more questions? We're going pretty good on time.
Oh, Evan's got one.
Oh, Evan, go ahead.
First, thank you guys for being on here, and sorry I'm missing everybody. I recently heard on NPR, KWGS, our local station, that there's been a Senate bill introduced to counteract the federal protection of codifying same-sex and interracial marriage. I've been trying to Google it and can't find the exact bill or the person who passed it. Question being, in a red state, what do you think the chances are of this passing?
Hi, Evan. It's good to see you and hear from you. I love that we're able to join via Zoom, like the bill number, but I do believe that that is a bill that someone has filed in the Oklahoma State Legislature. I'm trying to narrow it down if that would be House or Senate, but honestly, Senate is filing extreme bills like this just as regularly as House is. The bills that I've become more aware of, mostly through constituent contact, constituent phone calls and emails, are the just rash of anti-trans bills that are floating around right now.
We're kind of losing you a little bit, I
I've not
think.
heard of that one, but I think we've seen in the past many. Oh, how about now? How about now? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I believe it, and I've got to say, unfortunately, extreme bills with extreme language get hearings all the time. And I think what we need to do is figure out where that bill is going to be assigned. First, we need to start contacting that committee chairman as soon as possible, and that's all in the hot hearing.
I sit on the board of a couple other groups, and I know that we would be, not speaking on behalf of Will Rogers Rotary by any means, but some other groups that I'm a part of, I'm very interested in writing a letter, contacting whoever. My partner and I are planning on getting married next year sometime in Oklahoma, and it's just kind of a nerve-wracking thing to know that after all this work and all this pain and hardships that people went through to make it legal and to codify this stuff, and with the anti-trans bills as well, it's just saddening to me. But I thank you two for doing the fight. I've known John for years. Our kids go to school together and stuff, so I just know what you guys are doing on a day-to-day basis and how you get beat up every single day. So there's a small group of us that are grateful for your work.
Evan, I'm sorry to interrupt. I ache for you that this is something that this is a weight that you're bearing or an anxiety that you're having to deal with when you're on the verge of doing something so wonderful. I want to, at the same breath, offer you congratulations and also say that we will keep up the fight. extreme legislation like this does nobody any good, and it does some people a lot of harm. And I do believe that one of the tenets we should always be following in the state legislature is do no harm. And I consider this a very harmful bill.
It is
Well, thank
very,
you for your work, and I'll do whatever I can to help that as well.
it's very like the concept of Rotary.
Hey, if I can, I just want to echo something. Congratulations, Evan. And maybe I should keep you around in the Capitol. If I had you around me, I wouldn't get beat up.
Well, it's kind of like the concept of Rotary, which is if we can't help anybody, at very least do not harm them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any more questions? We're doing well on time. Anybody else? Yes, Tom?
Just out of the 10 bills that Senator Dossett is filing, what is another one or two that she considers most important this session?
Tom Upshaw has poses a query about, of the 10 bills, Senator Dossett, that you have filed, what
is her highest priority?
what's your priority of them? Are they in any set priority? Are they all equally important in your opinion?
It's not exactly the way
I love
phrased it.
this question. Thank you so much. As I said before, I believe that overall in the legislature we filed too many bills, we passed too many laws. I myself filed too many bills last time. My first go around, I've decided to reduce that number down to 10 and really focus on, I will be focusing on every one of the 10. None of them is a bill simply to strike a conversation or to highlight an issue. I will be trying to advance all of them. The two that I will likely put the most energy into are ones that saw movement last year, but didn't move all the way through the process. One of them has to do with our maternal mortality committee, and it requires that anytime that there is a maternal death in Oklahoma, that an autopsy report be provided by the medical examiner to the maternal mortality review committee so that they can better do their work. Part of the bill is also reducing the size of the committee by one in an effort to streamline and make more efficient government and how it works. And I think we can do the two things in the same bill. We can require that autopsy report be provided so that the committee has better data to work with, and then we can also reduce the size by one so that we're not trying to pull so many people into committee meetings from across the state so often and meet quorum and all those things to get work done. The other bill that I see pouring a special amount of energy into has to do with entrepreneurship. This is a tough one, and I'm going to need a lot of help on this one. Because it's kind of a big move. It would require the government to award 5% of their contracts to young companies. So young companies being anybody operating for 5 years or fewer in the state of Oklahoma. It's a big lift. It's a big ask. Both of those bills, I already have House authors who are members of the GOP caucus. Absolutely essential to have a Republican member carrying bills like that together with me so that we can move those bills along. I have a few other, I'll tell you about my education bills. Education bills are always passion bills for me. I definitely want these to move. Don't know how far they're going to move though. They're brand new. They're not old bills from last session or last legislature. One of them would allow a career teacher to carry that career teacher status from district to district, so that when she, say, starts new employment in a new district, but she has years of experience under her belt, she's not required to undergo the same evaluation. Programming that a new teacher would. So basically portability of career teacher status from district to district. Another education bill that I have would adjust the weights that are applied to specific types of students within the overall school funding formula. The specific types of students are English learners, students who receive speech and language services and therapy, and also students who come from poverty. I argue, and also I'm not arguing on my own, this was a bill actually carried by my predecessor, Senator Gary Stanislawski, several years ago. But I would argue, he would argue, and the results of a recent task force would argue that we need to increase the weights of those types of students because they simply require more resources in their education. So those categories again are English learners, students receiving speech and language services, and students coming from poverty. That bill would be a big boon for our own Tulsa public school system, and I think help many districts across the state who have increased populations of those types of students. And then my other education bill is a cost of living adjustment for retirees. We have got to start that conversation again and keep advancing that conversation again. The last help our retirees, our teacher retirees received was in the form of a one-time stipend. One-time stipends are not cutting it for our retirees who are living in our communities, contributing to our communities, paying taxes in our communities, generating revenue in our communities, and we need to keep doing better for them. Oh, and then finally, I should say this, I have one more education bill, working on it together with Rep. Waldron, that would allow the schools for the blind and the deaf in Oklahoma more access to funds for their building and facility needs, that they currently don't have access to that funding. And I could go on and on, but I do plan on doing very diligent work on each of my 10 bills. There are a few more, but I'll mute the mic and see if we need to go on to another question.
Well, back to what you were saying about retirees, I want to thank whoever was behind it, and for, believe it or not, I want to thank Governor Stitt for signing off on it, for state tax exempting military retirement pension. That helps me out a great deal. Oh, guess where a lot of the monies go from that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Any other questions, anybody? I have another one. Is there, in terms of recruiting healthcare professionals, with these highly restrictive pregnancy termination guidelines now, how many? I've been out of the loop on this ever since I retired, ever since the campaign of 2020. But how many critical, or how should I say this, complicated OB physicians are we able to have we been able to recruit in that time? At the time that we were running our campaign, JoAnna, it was like 15 to cover 77 counties, and I was just wondering if there had been any improvement on these numbers.
This is a great question, Stan, and I'm going to come at it in a roundabout way. I do not come from the healthcare field. I have no idea what it would be like to work, well, at any time as a healthcare professional, but now especially in a post-pandemic world where there are all kinds of complications and dangers and risks associated with one's work. There absolutely are shortages in all of the healthcare fields right now. And when you talk about specifically the most restrictive laws in the nation, really, regarding termination of pregnancies. And thank you for using such medically accurate terminology. I would expect no less of you, but as a woman, that feels good. Thank you for using real terminology when it comes to the healthcare that we're talking about here. I am actually going to, yes. Oh my goodness, some of the language that gets used on the Senate floor is so far from medically accurate. Anyway, but back on track, kind of on track. When you mentioned that, all these restrictive policies that we have and how it must be hard to recruit and retain healthcare professionals, it made me immediately think to the narrative around teachers. We have a teacher shortage as well, and with all of the unnecessary weight and scrutiny and demonization even, really, of teachers these days. That is one factor that's keeping us from recruiting and retaining teachers here. I can only imagine that it's happening in the healthcare fields as well. And then in answer to your question, I don't have an answer about what numbers are if we are if we're operating at critically low levels in any certain place when it comes to any given healthcare professional. But I can only imagine that the narrative is going about the same as it is for teachers in an environment where disrespect is the general attitude, and government trying to be inside your classroom or be inside the doctor's office with the patient and the doctor. The way that we do in Oklahoma, I can only imagine it's having a chilling and negative effect on recruitment and retention of healthcare professionals.
Remember, you and I have had discussions, actually, I get with a couple during the campaign, and then when we were at the convention last September, where we booked this nice meeting here. You know, a big question on a lot of people's mind, question on my mind, and it made me grateful that I was completely out. I had found a gig to do my last 6 years of my career that didn't involve doing any kind of obstetrics. But if, you know, somebody is forced to carry like who has a physically limiting condition that is unable to carry a normal pregnancy to term, and is forced to do that, and there's an untoward outcome, who bears the liability for that? Has there been any discussion on the Senate floor about, or the House floor for that matter, Representative Waldron, about liability and doing these things that they couldn't end well? How shall I say this? Carry a far higher risk of not ending well than a normal patient. And true, the professionals will tell you these represent a very, very small, like a fraction of 1% of cases. But you know, for these small-time, folks in rural areas, it only takes one of them to really be a problem. And there's one out there with our name on it. So anyway, go ahead.
Stan, once again, and this is JoAnna again, and I promise I will let Rep. Waldron back on the mic. This is highly unusual. I'm the one talking more and he's the one talking less at this moment. But what you just said about the small fraction of cases that we're talking about when it comes to these difficult, these complicated, these heart-wrenching pregnancies, where patient and in my view anyway, patient and doctor should be together alone in a room making a decision. This is a very, very, very discrete issue. It's a small number of cases, and what the legislature tends to do is deal with it in a very systemic, overarching way. And I cannot take credit for that, using that terminology. I just heard it yesterday from an expert in the field of education. Her criticism, and I asked for it, I said, what's your criticism of the Oklahoma State Legislature? What are we doing that's not helping public education? And she said nothing about funding. She said nothing about anything. She said you deal with discrete problems in systemic ways. You take problems that a teacher could handle by herself in her classroom. You take problems that a principal could handle by himself in his office. You take problems that a local school board could handle by themselves in their boardroom, and you over-legislate those items in systemic ways. And I feel like there's a direct link between the way we behave with, for example, teachers in classrooms, practicing their profession, practicing their trade, practicing their skill, and I do believe we do the same with medical professionals. We try to put ourselves, insert ourselves within their domain. I mean, how many years did you go to school? And I do want you to answer that question. How many years did you go to school? How many years did you practice in the field? How many years, oh my goodness, did you serve our country while practicing in the field? And when the legislature tries to step in and say, no, we know how to do it better, I can only imagine that's frustrating. It's highly frustrating, not only as someone who's in the sunset of their career, but still active, engaged in the community. Like you said, you're still helping out at Will Rogers High. But I can only imagine the chilling effect that would have on young folks trying to go into the career as well. Did I actually just turn that around and ask you a question?
Mhm.
Like, how does that feel when the legislature tries to tell you how to do your job?
Very, very, how shall I say, small,
Confining.
for lack of a better term. These fringe people that just take things to the unreasonable extremes. Nothing really meaningful. This I discovered as a candidate that nothing really gets done from the fringes. If you want meaningful change, it has to be in the mainstream. And, I admire you two for doing what you do every day, because, people try to paint us as French players, bring it back to the middle, and, Oklahoma, it's a difficult place to be an agent of reasonable change anymore. It's the beauty of being in an international organization like Rotary. We can work and we can affect change from where we are. We may not know it, and you all may not know it, but things we do matter a great deal down to somebody somewhere. Did that make any sense?
So much sense.
Okay. Yes, Susie?
I just have a comment, in that this club is used to having a representative as a member. So anytime either of you are in town, we would love to have you come and visit.
Well, they are members of Tulsa Rotary. They're already Rotarians.
I'm proselytizing then?
They are already Rotarians, and I bet you can do makeup meetings here. We're open for that. It's getting pretty close to time to adjourn. I want to thank you two for taking time out of your day over there under that big dome at Northeast 23rd and Lincoln to come visit with us. And Evan, I'm glad you were able to make it too. And this is for a nasty day like this. I think I'm actually pleased with the amount of members that we've had to brave it. Thank you so much, and you guys are welcome to stay until we do our 4-way test. First, before we do we have want to have somebody pick our little business there? We got a drawing. We give away half our little basket here for a free lunch, and you gotta let me do it this time.
Stan, it's been such a pleasure. In fact, anytime I get to do anything with you, it's such a pleasure. And once again, I regret not being able to be there in person. Thank you for your flexibility. You will never break. You are so flexible.
Well,
but I should run. I would like to.
Blessed are the
Yes,
flexible.
I would like to. Yes, I do need to get going, and I don't mean to speak for anyone else, for Rep. Waldron or Evan or anyone, but I should get going.
Okay, take care.
Yes, thank you, Stan. It's been an honor.
Okay, take care, John.
Okay.
Next time you're in town.
Take care. Bye bye.
Okay.
Okay.
Our
Bye.
number is 528. Who has 528? All right, Jeff got it. Yay.
Don't forget to sign up to service projects.
Yes. Yes, indeed. All right. Anything? Oh, yeah. Oh. Goes to that.
Goes in the blue bag.
That goes in the blue bag. Do we have any other announcements other than MSNI on Saturday? I'm gonna be there early. I'm gonna have bagels and cream cheese and maybe some other pastries to enjoy at our little break time in the break room. And anybody,
What is
all are welcome. Yes. Tom.
What are they gonna do at MSN? Same as last time?
Yeah, just we're not gonna be loading a container. we're just gonna be packing supplies and doing what we're doing, and then packing a pallet, stacking a pallet. We have so when BJ, the director, gets his gets ready to load another container, everything will be all set. That was a good, when we loaded that one that went to Ukraine, everything went well. I mean, that went a lot quicker than I thought it was going to, actually. Just sorry you got cut.
Oh, we had a big, group.
Yeah, we
helping
did.
too.
No, sorry, we gotta just be careful with the staples and stuff in the.
Conquered myself.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody else have anything, any announcements, any word to put out, anything? Okay, we'll go ahead and stand for the four-way test. Four-way test of things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Next week, we have Mayor Bynum. So
Invite a guest.
we're going to, invite a guest, and hopefully the weather will be a little bit more cooperative. Thanks everybody again for coming out today.
All right. Did you bring your survey?
Take care of it.
Survey?
Oh,
shoot, okay. Is that gonna work? 9 to